24th of May 2022, which I now declare open. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the members, which we don't have many yet, of the public gallery who have joined us, and obviously all of the people who are still watching at home on the internet. So obviously, as well as being live streamed, the video recording of this meeting will also be available on our website. So attendees in the gallery, if you are to arrive, are advised that your presence may be recorded. So on behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the land on which Moonee Valley is located and that we're meeting on, that of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us today. Now, councillors, we do have an apology for tonight's meeting from Councillor Adams, and I'll have governance note that apologies don't need to be voted on. Be noted. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is the confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday the 10th of May 2022 be confirmed? Moved Councillor Bettio, seconded Councillor Tyson. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 4 on the agenda is conflicts of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest on any item on the agenda this evening? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm declaring a conflict of interest in items 9.7 and 9.8 for reasons previously disclosed to the CEO in writing prior to commencement of this evening's meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would anybody else like to declare a conflict of interest on any item on the agenda tonight? No. We'll then move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is presentations. I do believe we have a couple tonight. Councillor Tyson.
Thank you, Mayor. As councillors are aware, the 2022 federal election was held on Saturday with an Albanese Labor government elected to lead our country. I'm looking forward to the new Commonwealth government serving Moonee Valley and our community on issues important to us, including cost of living, climate change, aged care and childcare funding. There are many new representatives across Victoria, but I'd particularly like to focus on our part of the world in Melbourne's northwest. I'm sure colleagues would join me in congratulating the member for Maribyrnong on his return and reaching 15 years serving our community. I'm looking forward to Bill being in the best position to advocate for our shared priorities, especially large projects such as the airport rail link delivering for our local community. As well, I'd like to acknowledge Sam Ray for his election in Hawke. Although outside Moonee Valley, the member for Hawke will be an ally to our community. I'm extraordinarily proud to know Sam and call him a friend. As an honest, decent, intelligent, hard worker, I know he will live up to the legacy of his electorate's namesake. Finally, the 2 new incoming government senators deserve to be acknowledged, Senators Linda White and Jana Stewart. As a local to our part of the world, Senator Stewart is the first Indigenous senator from the Victorian Labor Party and is going to be a fierce advocate for the most vulnerable members of our municipality. I hope the City of Moonee Valley will work closely with the 2 new senators, and for the same reason, we're all here to leave our community better off than when we arrived.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Any other, Councillor Isa, I believe you had a presentation tonight too.
I do, thank you, Mayor, and unfortunately my presentation is on a less positive note. I was very saddened to hear of the very sudden death of Robert Kirkwood, who died tragically on the 12th of May. And if it's okay, Mayor, I'd just like to read some words of his neighbour. Robert made a significant contribution to our Flemington community over the last 10 years. As founder of the Flemington Green Ninja Army, Rob organised many volunteer greening projects in the streetscapes of Flemington. He was passionate about our environment and the local wildlife and found our neglected and barren streets an opportunity to provide habitat for our birds and beautify our streets. Flemington residents will fondly remember his passion for the local rainbow lorikeets and cockatoos who frequented his bird bath and feeders suspended outside his home. Always up for a chat, many residents walking past will remember his cheery, friendly persona, and there was always an opportunity to recruit new members of his Flemington Green Ninja Army. Rob was generous with his support for anyone that needed a hand in the neighbourhood, including his elderly neighbours, and one of his legacies will be the many street plantings that continue to thrive. His loss to our community is immeasurable, and his street and Flemington will never be the same. I understand that Rob's funeral will be held next week, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Were there any other presentations for this evening? No. Item 6 on the agenda is petitions and joint letters. Councillors, I don't believe we have any. In that case, we will move on to item 7, and I don't believe we have any public questions for tonight. And I will now move on to item 8, which is reports from delegates. Do we have any reports from delegates? In that case, we will move on to item 9, and we do have things in item 9 on the agenda because they're our reports. So we'll go to 9.1, which is 72 Buller Road, Strathmore, Lot 1 on Plan of Subdivision 432473U. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillors, a motion for...
If no one's moving a motion, I'll move a motion, but if you can just give me a minute, Mayor, I just was responding to governance to send through the presentation, so I'm happy to move a motion if no one else wants to. But if you can just give me 10 seconds to press send on this email to governance.
We absolutely can. So just for those that are watching at home, we've just called for item 9, which is the reports, which is 9.1, 72 Buller Road, Strathmore, Lot 1 on Plan of Subdivision 432473U, close bracket. And Councillor Isa has said that she will be moving something in a moment and is just sending something through to governance. Are we ready to go, Councillor Isa?
Can I just check that no one else wanted to move this motion? That's why I'm stepping in, because no one else was putting up a hand. I don't want to be accused later of stepping in improperly.
Anyone can move a motion, Councillor Isa. I don't believe there's any other hands up, so the floor is yours.
So I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with some amendments. The first amendment being 1A, an amended colour. Oh, sorry.
Councillor Isa, would you like me to adjourn the meeting?
Yeah, but it's not. Yeah, I think we need to, because I had anticipated that a ward councillor might be moving the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. So it is currently 6:42 on this clock. I believe that we will. I will adjourn the meeting for a short period of time, approximately 5 minutes, and we will see you back online shortly. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It is 6:47 and we'll reopen the meeting after that short adjournment. So I will start again by calling 9.1 72 Buller Road, Strathmore, Lot 1 on plan of subdivision 432473U. Councillors, do I have a motion?
Mayor, I'll move the officer's recommendation with some slight amendments.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio.
Sorry, can I pull that up, please, Governance? So an additional condition, 1A, an amended colour and material schedule which utilises lighter finishes for the upper floor levels and incorporates further variation to the material application of the ground floor facade, in brackets both frontages, while maintaining the meaningful incorporation of the selected brick material. Also an additional point 1E. Now I just want to make sure that the letters are...
Yep.
An amended, point E.
Yep.
The northern retreat of dwelling 2 to be screened or sill heights elevated to a height of 1.7 metres above the finished floor level.
Yes. Thank you. And so changing those two, and that's what you're moving, Councillor Bedio?
Yes,
as
ma'am.
per what's on the screen?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. So moved. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Tyson. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, the application seeks planning approval for the construction of 3 dwellings comprising of 1 triple-storey dwelling fronting Buller Road, Strathmore, and 2 triple-storey buildings fronting Balmoral Avenue, Strathmore, in the general residential zone. I have made some slight amendments to the application in light of feedback from objecting parties. I think ensures that the development is better suited to its environment.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Councillor Tyson.
I'll second for the purposes of debate, Mayor. I think Councillor Bedio's changes are reasonable. However, I'm not supportive of the application as a whole. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Would anybody else like to speak on this application?
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move an additional amendment, please.
Thank you, Councillor Reiser. Sorry, what was the amendment?
Yep. Sorry, there was just an email that came through. I was just not clear whether that was directed at me or not. Sorry. Additional amendment. It's additional point. I don't know, it's additional point what? Additional point. Strike out E.
Councillor Reiser.
It's a new point E that reads replacement of the second floor retreats in brackets excluding stairs and terraces of all dwellings with rooftop garden areas of the same or lesser size whilst complying with standard B22 of clause 55.04-5 in brackets overlooking close brackets of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme and modification of any associated internal rearrangements as a result.
So that's a complete, I'm just trying to make sure that we all know what we're voting on. So the complete strikeout of E and to be replaced with what's on the screen there. Councillor Reiser, is that correct? Still has elevated. Oh, sorry, the screen's just moved. The placement of the second floor retreat. Is everyone aware of what the amendment is? Can I just get a general consensus? Everyone's aware of what the amendment is? Thank you, Councillor Isa. So moved. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the amendment?
I apologise for the delays there. I had requested some words around this, and there was just some misunderstanding as to what the intent of my amendment was, and so we were just trying to get the exact words. So I apologise to anyone watching if that came across as a little bit clunky and unclear, and I trust that I've now put that in the correct spot, and that those words are and I know that it's really hard at home for people to follow what a particular amendment might be saying or doing. So the amendment that I've moved is to replace those retreats at the top of the buildings with rooftop terraces rather than a built form retreat, but still allowing the staircases to go up to a rooftop garden area that might be the same size or a different size, and still complying with the standard B22, which is the overlooking standard, which is an important aspect because in replacing the retreat with a rooftop element, that may present some overlooking issues that might, I think it doesn't because of the 9 metre distance, but the amendment is making sure that there are no subsequent overlooking issues that weren't present when there was a retreat in that location. And the reason that I've moved this particular amendment is because, I do think that on the whole, this particular application is acceptable. And I do also think that as councillors, we have a real responsibility to make sure that we approve housing in Moonee Valley that is compliant housing, because we do know of the quite chronic housing shortage across the nation. And so I think that where there is compliant housing put forward, we are obliged to not refuse that, to not stand in the way of that. However, I do think that the retreats placed on the top floor of these particular buildings is problematic in a couple of regards. Firstly, they're 4-bedroom homes largely, and so this additional retreat doesn't present a really necessary additional space. It's costly. It will boost up the price of the homes, that then doesn't make them in that sort of affordable bracket that we need more of in the municipality. Now, that's not a planning concern, but it is one of the motivations for me moving this, because I don't think the retreats add anything by way of amenity or livability. Yet I do think they present bulk and unnecessary bulk in the neighbourhood in which they're proposed. So I'm putting forward this amendment, I guess, as a compromise possibility that addresses some of those concerns that have been put forward, while also supporting the compliant housing that we do need in our municipality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson?
Thanks, Mayor. I'm happy to support this amendment on the basis that I agree it doesn't detract from the livability of the property for future residents, but it does address some of those concerns that have been expressed about, built form and excessive bulk and size along, even though it is along a major road, and understand that, consideration or assessment of the application from the officers. I do think that this is an amendment that can be incorporated into the design of this one without detriment to the house itself, and it does respond to those concerns from the people who will live next door and around in the area. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would anybody else like to speak to this amendment? Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you to my colleagues. However, I won't be supporting this amendment. I believe that the composition of having a 4-bedroom townhouse like this is quite unique, and I think if we're, in approving this application, attempting to improve on the housing stock or the mix of housing stock in the municipality, having a 4-bedroom house is something that we should be supporting. I don't necessarily think that taking it away necessarily improves the visual bulk by such an amount that it's worth detracting from that additional bedroom. I'm just thinking if you were a family with 3 kids, it can be very expensive to get into our municipality. However, it might be a lot more attractive in a townhouse setting like this. So for that reason, I think in supporting the housing stock and the diversity of housing stock, I won't support this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Any other councillor to speak on the amendment? No. Councillor Isa, would you like to close for the amendment? Sorry, no. I will put just the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Tyson, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Nation, Councillor Byrne. All those against? That is Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Bedio. That amendment is carried. We'll now move back to the substantive motion, and I have had it moved by Councillor Bedio and seconded by Councillor Tyson. Nobody else has spoken on it as yet. Would anybody else like to speak on the substantive? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be quick. Obviously, this is my ward, being in Buckley Ward, and acknowledging the location of this application and the conversion from 1 house to 3 townhouses. I can't support this application in its current form. I think it's just way too big, bulky, and I think it's just going to have a detrimental impact to the surrounding area. I know that there are bigger houses being built along Buller Road, and there's a number of flat roofs in existence along Buller Road, but 3 very large townhouses on this 641 square block, for me it is just too big, and I am really disheartened by the fact that a beautiful Federation style house is being demolished to make way for these this design of housing, and noting, unfortunately the house is not covered by a heritage overlay, so obviously the applicant can, they can do what they like with the site, and I understand that, but I'm just not comfortable at all with it, so I won't be supporting this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would anybody else like to speak to the substantive? No. Councillor Bettio, would you like to close?
Only just to add that I do agree that it would be a shame to, demolish what is a beautiful Victorian home. The reality that we are in moving towards much more of an inner city municipality is that we need to support a mixture of housing stock. We need to be able to support people, new homeowners and families wanting to get into our municipality. Unfortunately, the McMansions of the past, while on one point they're not environmentally friendly, they're not sustainable, but also that it makes it really difficult and makes it harder for people to come into our neighbourhood and join our community. So I would encourage councillors to support this development. While I agree that it would be disappointing to lose some of that heritage, I think in moving forward we need to support a mixture and diversity of housing stock.
Thank you, Councillor Bettio. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Bettio, Hodgson, Isa and Byrne. All those against is Councillor Nation, Sypek, Sharp and Tyson. That motion is carried on the casting vote of the Mayor. Item 9.2 on the agenda is 1097 to 1105 Mount Alexander Road, Essendon Shops Heritage Investigations. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I have an alternative motion. If I could read that out, please.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp.
That Council resolves to A, note the findings of the preliminary heritage assessment for 1097 to 1105 Mount Alexander Road, Essendon, report attachment 1. B, note that 1097 to 1105 Mount Alexander Road compares well to interwar retail precincts, and a preliminary assessment indicates that the sites would likely meet the threshold for inclusion in the heritage overlay of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. C, proceed with a further detailed heritage study as a priority on 1097 to 1105 Mount Alexander Road, Essendon, to determine the potential for including these properties in the heritage overlay of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. And D, request a report if the detailed study recommends any of the properties be included in the heritage overlay. This report will seek adoption of the detailed heritage study and also seek authorisation from the Minister for Planning to prepare a planning scheme amendment to apply interim and permanent heritage controls to all recommended properties.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Nation. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, this notice of motion that I raised a little while ago was brought about just through conversations with locals, and I'm extremely pleased to see that the investigation has looked at these properties and determined that they are certainly very much intact. I'll just read a bit of the report. It says the level of intactness is very good and compares well to interwar retail precincts on Moonee Valley's heritage overlay. This is because 3 of the 5 shop fronts are moderately intact, and the parapets and cantilever verandas of all 5 are intact. The report indicates there is a high probability that 1097 to 1105 Mount Alexander Road, Essendon, would meet the threshold for listing on the existing heritage overlay, and the report recommended that the properties be assessed for inclusion within the heritage overlay of Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. So obviously my alternative is to request the next steps. I think it's absolutely extremely vitally important to protect the heritage within Moonee Valley, and we don't often have many of our commercial precincts within a heritage overlay. Oh, we probably do actually, but not around Buckley Ward. So the fact that these properties are so well intact after being built, nearly 100 years ago, I think we really need to harness that fact and do whatever we can to ensure that these properties can be protected if the report does come back and tell us that. But based on preliminary findings, obviously, from what we're being told tonight and within this report, if anything, it's probably quite a rare example of an interwar retail precinct that is as intact as what it is currently. So I look forward to having the process move forward, and I hope councillors can support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support this motion with the changes, and I think it's been a really good pickup by Councillor Sharp. Just to obviously note that these properties might warrant inclusion or warrant heritage controls, and as Councillor Sharp has said, the report does justify that, and it surprised me actually the age of the shop. So obviously over 100 years old, and you definitely think about in Buckley Ward, you've got a few varieties of interwar retail in Moonee Ponds, but a lot of probably what did exist in Buckley Ward in the northern end of our municipality has since been flattened over the years for just other 70s, 80s commercial builds, or even more recent commercial builds. So the fact that these properties have that intactness, that they are a period that has a lot of heritage value, and the fact that we can now do some more work into looking at them, and potentially it's just the start, because you think about some of the beautiful shops we've got up Napier Street in the Essendon end, and it might be a chance to have a look at some more properties and include them in future heritage studies. You know, we do have a heritage gap study, and that word gap is because there are holes in it, and there are properties that we don't necessarily know or haven't identified, and it is times like instances like this where a member of the community through a councillor will flag a property or properties, and we have the opportunity to take some action. So well done, Councillor Sharp. I'm more than happy to support the motion on the floor, and think look forward to receiving more information about the history of these shops, and hopefully, if it warrants, to put relevant controls on. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would anybody else like to speak on this? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to speak in support of this motion. I just did want to make a few comments, I guess a bit in response to the comments that have been made. I agree, it was a really great report, this one. Some really interesting history to this site. Not quite as good as the report that, or almost, on the interest level that we had when we received one on 118 Glass Street recently as well. That was a really interesting. I enjoy reading those historical reports. In fact, when we were looking into whether or not to investigate a heritage grant program for properties a couple of meetings ago, I did have a look at which business precincts in our city do have a heritage overlay. And the report also does mention this. A couple of streets already in this shopping strip do have heritage protection. The Napier Street shops that Councillor Nations referred to also carry a heritage protection for some of those intact dwellings, and a number of others around the municipality, including some in Keilor Road, just around the corner of these ones actually, up around the Lincolnshire Arms Hotel, and a few down in my ward as well, with properties along Union Road, Puckle Street, Holmes Road, Racecourse Road. This is the result of a really thorough work program that we've been undertaking, and the one consideration that I had in this was whether the report does detail whether or not we should divert from the program of work that a lot of effort and time and money has gone into already, but we're not above admitting where there's been a gap, and this one's obviously been identified, and it's good that it has, because as I've always said, once heritage is lost, it's lost forever. You can't get that back, and if we have these intact properties, I think I'm definitely supportive of taking the next steps to ensure that they are properly assessed and potentially seeking heritage protection controls over them. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would anybody else like to speak on this motion? Councillor Sharp, would you like to close? I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Nation, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa. All those against is Councillor Byrne. That item is carried. Item 9.3 on the agenda is discharge of responsibility as determining referral authority, planning permit MV-567-2021, 7 Fisher Parade, Ascot Vale. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Sorry, Mayor, just checking my mic. I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. And a seconder? Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak to the item?
Just briefly, Mayor, this is an application coming to us in our capacity as the determining authority. I think it's an administrative function that we perform because there's a public acquisition overlay to which we are the interested party. It's along the Maribyrnong River. There's been a couple like this that have come to this council term, and we are required to make a decision on whether the application in front of us impacts on our interests in the public acquisition overlay. This application does. It already has a built form through a paved area. I think it is a paved or a decking area, and a little a little corner of the dwelling itself. The application doesn't make any further encroachment into the public acquisition overlay, but the fact that it does currently sit in that overlay area is enough for the recommendation to come to us to object to the application, and I'm happy to support that officer's recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa?
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Hodgson. We've had a number of these applications, I think was mentioned, and this is not an unfamiliar discussion that we're having. With this particular site has quite a convoluted or quite a long history, and it may seem a bit confusing, but I think that perhaps the report, one of the things that I think the report doesn't detail, which I actually think was quite a significant aspect of this, the report details a number of applications similar to this, but it misses the one at 47 Fisher Parade, which was dealt with in, I'm going to get the years wrong, but it was dealt with a few years ago. And that was quite an important application because that went to VCAT, and VCAT made some very clear, gave some very clear directions around the treatment of the public access overlay as it exists currently. Public is that what it's? Public acquisition overlay, public access overlay. I think acquisition. Thank you. I've got that wrong before, so it's embedded in my memory incorrectly. So I think that while the history of this particular application may seem somewhat inconsistent over time, if you line it up against the VCAT decisions around the public acquisition overlay, it's really important that we remain consistent with that while that's in place. And so I think that's what makes this all make sense for me, which is that there are two quite significant VCAT decisions which give us real direction as to what we should really do as the referral authority in this particular situation. And so I guess we're following VCAT's guidance and direction in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would anybody else like to speak to this motion? Councillor Hodgson, would you like to close? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Byrne. All those against? Councillor Nation and Councillor Bedio. That motion is carried. Item 9.4 on the agenda is the Moonee Valley Soccer Strategy 2022 to 32. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move an alternative, please, if I could.
Yes.
Read that out. That Council resolves to A, endorse the draft Moonee Valley Soccer Strategy 2022 to 2023, Attachment 1, for further community consultation in line with Council's engagement framework. B, note that the draft soccer strategy does not represent an implementation plan and will be used to inform future budget processes and funding partnership opportunities. C, note that the construction of an additional sports field at Canning Reserve is not feasible and not recommended at this time. D, provide a report on the final Moonee Valley Soccer Strategy to Council for adoption no later than September 2022. And E, provide an additional report to Council by September 2022 that outlines short-term options and benefits/impacts that would enable soccer to be played year-round at existing venues and/or year-round pavilion usage for soccer clubs, not limited to Cross Keys Reserve and Strathnavor Reserve.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek.
I'm happy to second this motion, Madam Mayor, but I just want a clarification from one of the officers in regards to where it says no additional sporting fields. Is that a soccer pitch, no additional soccer pitches? or just sporting fields in
Sorry,
total?
okay, so you're seconding what's on there, is
Yeah,
that right?
I just want clarification.
And then now your point of clarification is in regards to
Sporting field, whether where it's specific to soccer pitch that can't fit there, or any kind of pitch, hockey pitch, soccer pitch, netball pitch, whatever.
I'm happy to. I believe we've got the Director of Strategy and Planning coming up to the microphone, who is happy to respond.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it refers to all sporting fields.
That answer your point of clarification?
That's
Thank
fine.
you. So we've got moved by Councillor Sharp and seconded by Councillor Sypek. Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'm very excited to see a draft soccer strategy be presented to us tonight for endorsement. A hell of a lot of work has gone into this strategy, and I want to sincerely thank our officers, our sports team headed by Simon Lawton. Simon and his team have done a really amazing job on this, and I truly can't thank them enough. It's taken a long time to get the information right, but within this draft strategy there are some really good ideas, some ideas that are, you know, out of the box, if you'd like to call it that, but it was something that has been well needed, needed a long time ago really, and I'm just really pleased to be able to see it here tonight, and I look forward to seeing what the clubs and the community think about the ideas. And like I said, I have asked for the report to come back slightly earlier, so flag September, which I've been advised isn't an issue. And point E relates to requesting an additional report, and I think that's quite important as well, and seeing as we're talking about soccer, I suppose, particularly in regards to pavilion use. That's really what I am very much looking forward to seeing the report flesh out. So, and it's a report that we can all consider around September 22 when it comes back to us. So that's what that point is asking for. But I really, really look forward to seeing the feedback from the clubs, and truly I really can't thank the officers enough because it's a really wonderful strategy. So thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to support this motion. Yes, I too agree that the officers have done a magnificent job in bringing this together, and hopefully we'll get some very, very good input from the community and from a lot of the clubs. Not to mention that the World Game is coming to us, the Female World Championships is coming to Australia, and I think that this is a perfect opportunity for us to showcase what we've done for soccer so far, as like it's in Cross Keys, which has become a great nice soccer hub there. Strathnaver Reserve, we're getting there. We just need to update the pitch, and that'll become a beautiful little soccer hub there as well. But all the clubs in Moonee Valley. When I first came on council, they were all in the very lower leagues, and now all of a sudden we've got two clubs in one of the highest state leagues, which is a fantastic achievement for a local club, a fantastic achievement. And I think with the support of Moonee Valley and the support of this soccer strategy and the information that we're going to collate from this, I think we can just only go better and better in the whole soccer world. And I think we're going to create a legacy here that future generations are going to enjoy what's going to come out of this soccer strategy. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Is there any other councillor who wishes to speak on this motion? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor, and I'm more than happy to support putting out this draft Moonee Valley Soccer Strategy for consultation. As my fellow councillors have said, there is some fairly significant pieces of work or potential future projects that we could proceed with and that are outlined in the strategy. One of the things that it obviously does pick up is that participation is increasing. It's a sport that is enjoyed by males and females at both junior and elite levels. And as Councillor Sypeck said, we are starting to also get teams that are playing in higher leagues or getting to final stages of the FFA Cup, and so it's a great time to capitalise on that, particularly given even just this Saturday we'll have 2 Melbourne-based teams meeting in the A-League Grand Final, including our what we call our local team, Western United, for the first time just in their 3rd year in the competition, so that's fantastic to hear. I also want to thank Councillor Sharp for putting in that point E, because one of the things that was quite evident in the report was there are some really big pieces that have to move before we get a soccer hub or a real proper year-round soccer hub, and a lot of it relates to working with educational land, realising master plans that haven't yet been realised, things that take a considerable period of time, given it can take us 3 years just to design and install a playground somewhere, let alone trying to work up big projects that aren't even necessarily on land that's under our control. So section part E just asks for a report, because it'd be good to know what we can do in the short term, stuff that's not 6-10 years away, but how we can really capitalise on the great work local clubs are doing, and capitalise on the need for soccer facilities and soccer facilities year round. So it's solely asking for a report. It will come back with the final soccer strategy in September 2022, and in my view, it just is going to give us a really holistic picture, an idea about ultimately what we can do immediate, short, medium, long term, but also what the community thinks about that through the consultation outlined in the start of the motion. So more than happy to support this. Thank you, Councillor Sharp, for putting in those extra points, and go the green and black this Saturday night. You've dressed very appropriately there, Mayor Byrne, if I can see correctly, if that colour's correct, a good Western United green on, and let's hope they get over the line, as much as it hurts to say, against Melbourne City, who I've really jumped ship from, and so they'll probably win, but let's jump aboard Western United this Saturday night. Thanks, Mayor.
And I see you're in your blue, Councillor Nation, so don't know what that means, but thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd just like to move an amendment to the motion, please, that removes point E and amends point D to read, provide a report on the final Moonee Valley soccer strategy to Council for adoption no later than September 2022, that addresses the challenges set out on page 1 of the draft report.
So apologies, completely removing point E.
That's right.
Is that correct? And then the point D, and we'll just wait for that to come up on the board, was, if you could just read that again, Councillor Isa.
It's on page 21 of the pack, thanks, Mayor. It's point D that reads, as on the screen, that provide a report on the final Moonee Valley soccer strategy to Council for adoption no later than September 2022 that addresses the challenges set out on page 1 of the draft report.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. That amendment is moved. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thanks, Mayor. We've run our poor officers ragged asking for reports on soccer, and what I'm seeking to do in this particular amendment is not change what we as a council receive information back on, but just streamline the process a little bit so that we don't have to receive 2 reports back from council officers. We can receive one report that details the matters that were in the previous point E. And the reason that that I'm putting it that way is because on page 1 of the draft soccer strategy, there are 6 challenges set out, and challenge 4 is year-round access to soccer facilities. Challenge 2 is equitable allocation of soccer grounds, and Challenge 5 is maximising access to community sporting reserves and assets. And I guess not to preempt, because this is going out for community consultation and I really don't want to preempt any feedback from the community, but one of the things that I'm really keen, I guess, to sharpen up in this process of the draft going out for consultation and then coming back to us is that I don't get a sense that some of those challenges have really been, the response to that's really been articulated in the report. And I'd like to see some greater clarity in how exactly we're meeting those challenges. And if I've misread the report, I'll have another look at it and perhaps it's my problem and not the report's. But I would really like to see some really clear outline as to how this strategy meets those challenges. And point E before was talking about year-round access to soccer facilities, so that's what I'm expecting to come back in the report. But I would really like to make it just one report so that our officers, as I say, are not having to write multiple reports that we've asked them to do a lot of work in this space. We've also previously asked them to do a lot of work around the sports ground, what was it called? The seasonal sport allocation policy. And the seasonal sport allocation policy that we've now got in place does in fact allow for the year-round access to soccer facilities. So if our soccer strategy needs to embed that information more clearly and make it clear that that's how we're meeting Challenge 4, and if there are other things that need to be done to meet Challenge 4, as mentioned by Councillor Nation just now, then I'd like to see that really set out in our soccer strategy. I look forward to hearing other, that's just my amendment actually, but I look forward to hearing other feedback on the consultation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson on the amendment.
Thanks, Mayor. And look, Councillor Isa has covered off the main points for why I'm supportive of this amendment. To my view, the point E that was moved originally, there's been a lot of decisions coming through or reports coming through the chamber on soccer, and in each of them there seems to be a little bit of direction given in our resolutions about how to kind of operationalise some of this. And from my perspective, I think it's a really fantastic thing that we're doing a soccer strategy that's going to guide the strategic direction of how this council works with our soccer community to improve access and facilities for the soccer community. I do think it's our role to set that policy and strategic direction and then to allow it to be operationalised by our officers. So to my mind, I think the first step we need to do is to put this draft strategy out to consultation and hear the feedback, with then the operationalisation of that, once we do endorse it, to be dealt with at that point. The other issue that I had was about exactly the short-term options for year-round soccer, I believe are addressed through our recently endorsed seasonal allocation policy, which does allow for allocations to both grounds and pavilions for all codes that have a competition requirement. So I do acknowledge that the report goes into some other additional needs, but I do think that will be dealt with at the time that it's required, and that the short-term demand, I believe, for clubs is met through our revised seasonal allocation policy. So I don't see that there's a pressing need to explore these benefits and impacts by September, and that they can be done, post us endorsing a strategy. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would anybody else like to speak just on the amendment? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. Some councillors may not want a second report, but I'm personally very happy to be provided with an additional report that is going to only relate to point E. So this isn't something that's going to be combined and packaged up with the soccer strategy, obviously. It is an additional report. So I just want to make that clear. And as Councillor Nation said, if anything, this only provides us with more holistic information. And, you know, I would like to thank Councillor Nation because Councillor Nation actually flagged this today. So, and I think it's a really good way to be able to look. The seasonal sport allocation policy has been mentioned tonight, and absolutely, yet again, our officers have been able to fix an issue that has dogged this council for years and years through a better seasonal allocation policy, and that has been fantastic. Now, I'm quite sure that the report that is asked for in point E will come back in that form and tell us that. But if you look back at point E, it's talking about year-round pavilion usage. Now, I'm not sure if all councils are aware, but not one soccer club has a permanent home. Not one of them has a pavilion where they can leave their things up, their memorabilia, their pictures, their anything up. They have to vacate the premises after 6 months. Soccer is not a pop-up 6-month sport, and every other sporting club within our municipality has a home. That is an absolute fact. So I'm quite keen to have a more holistic lens glanced over this and have this information presented to us via the additional report so that we can actually, while we're talking about soccer, let's just fix all the issues rather than have it, you know, drag on and on an ad hoc sort of basis. Let's just fix it. We all know there's an issue with soccer clubs not having proper homes. So, you know, rather than we're discussing this in another 6-12 months, let's just do it now. We're talking about the strategy. And at the end of the day, this point E is requesting a report. And I'm quite sure that a report will tell us all we need to know and refer to the seasonal allocation policy and tell us that we're making great strides. But there's just a few little things that still need to be fixed, and I certainly don't support taking out point E. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Would anybody else like to speak to this amendment? Councillor Bedio.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I won't be supporting this amendment, mainly because I do agree with Councillor Sharp that when looking at this strategy, it goes across quite a long term, from the short term, medium term to long term. So it goes from 2022 through to 2032. But what we know is that there's some immediate requirements, and this has been flagged in particular by Councillor Sharp for quite some time. And I recently went out to Cross Keys Pavilion a few weeks ago to watch the Royals play, and speaking with the team and speaking with the coaches and players there, and there is an immediate need for long-term tenancy and for year-round use. Now, I personally would like to see an additional report so that we can fix those short-term issues and start to look into those as a separate matter, but then also formulate the soccer strategy so that it covers the medium to longer term, because I think there's going to be some decisions that we need to make. This has been going on for quite some time, but we're yet to come to a motion that actually allows us to make a change. So I would really like to see an additional report come to us in September for short-term options. So for that reason, I won't be supporting this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Would any other councillor like to speak to this amendment? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. So look, I'll just speak to the amendment, and I won't be supporting it because I guess the page 1 of the soccer strategy outlines there are some massive challenges with the sport of soccer in the municipality, and there's not a lot of quick fixes. There's some really large-scale things that we need to do. Yes, year-round access is one of those challenges, but there are 6 big challenges, and each and every one of them is important. The inclusion of E, and why I don't support striking it out, is because point E basically addresses the challenge on page 1 that is holding kids back from getting on the pitch straight away. Now, the other challenges are important. They're big pieces of work, and they're just as important as as year-round access to soccer facilities. But this one specific challenge for year-round access to soccer facilities gets kids on the pitch. We've got 3 junior-sized pitches in the city of Moonee Valley. We've got over 1,000 kids registered under the age of 18, both male and female, that play the game. Now, those junior pitches aren't necessarily even available year-round, and that's why year-round access is an issue. So, while appreciating the broad scope of the soccer strategy and the considerable number of actions we need to take, I also think we need to fast-track some short-term options to get kids on the pitch and give clubs the opportunity to have a base year-round. Now, that might not necessarily transpire. The report maybe says it won't be able to happen because based on usage. But give us the information so we can start to make a decision. You know, you look down at the Great Essendon Hockey Club, who are one of the leading clubs in our city. They do such good stuff throughout the community, but they do it because they're year-round. Now, I know there might be different setups and lease structures, etc., but they're not moving out after 6 months, and they have that connectivity to the community for 12 months to be able to deliver programs, and not just the elite program, but they do some great stuff with our minority communities as well. So why can't that be replicated with soccer? And yes, the soccer strategy will get us there, but we need that point E to stay in because it will help fast track that a little bit, and it will help ensure we get kids on the pitch, hopefully by the end of the year, over summer, and create a permanent soccer home. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would anybody else like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Isa, for your alternative. And when I first read it, and I thought, what a great idea, saving time with officers and not having 2 reports. But after hearing some of the arguments, I've sort of had a bit of a change of mind, because if our officers are looking at the soccer strategy now, I don't see the harm in doing 1 report or 2 reports, because they're going to have that information in front of them. What I'm thinking of now is, if we only had the 1 report, in 6 months' time, we could be asking for clarification or for some more information from the officers, and that will delay this whole report. So while our officers are looking at this, I would rather just say, let's just do the 2 reports, get it over and done with, and let's move on with the soccer strategy, rather than just keep delaying and delaying and delaying. So I'm not going to support this motion, but I am supporting the actual soccer strategy. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And yes, Councillor Sypek, we are just talking about the amendment at the moment. Would anybody else like to speak on the amendment? No. Councillor Isa, would you like to close on your amendment?
Can I just ask a point of clarification, Mayor? I think it's to the Director of Strategy and Planning. Last year there was a motion, or I think a motion that was seeking report back or update on the capacity for clubs for the MOU of the use of connected to the use of pavilions, to allow clubs to retain memorabilia in clubs. Can I just ask whether the director's able to?
I'm very mindful that that's not in this particular.
Well, it was raised by Councillor Sharp as a reason for not supporting the amendment.
Point of order. I did that.
Just Councillor Sharp,
You've misinterpreted that completely.
If you have a point of order, what is your point of order?
What I stated has been misconstrued.
Councillor Sharp, in order to raise a point of order, you need to identify the basis on which you're making the point of order and the specific governance rule.
It's tedious, Mayor. Tedious.
So you don't want to continue with the point of order?
No, the point of order is that it's tedious. Tedious repetition.
What governance rule number is that?
Clause 55.6.
Tedious repetition of something already said.
Well, these governance rules aren't the best, so that's all I could find.
Councillor Sharp, if you put forward a point of order, I obviously have to follow through the whole
I know,
procedure,
Mayor.
or would you
It's
like
just
to withdraw
very-
the point of order?
It's very difficult, Mayor, when, councillors...
No, Councillor Sharp.
Yep, okay, withdraw, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Now, Councillor Isa, we were at the point of, you were asking a point of clarification through an officer, but it's not in the report, and I don't believe we have the answer at this point in time.
And look, to clarify why I was raising it, it was put forward an argument against this particular amendment was that clubs, soccer clubs in particular, need 12-month access to a facility in order to put up memorabilia. And at some point last...
Councillor Sharp, that's enough, thank you. Councillor Isa.
At some point last year, that very question was brought to the chamber. It was brought, I think, as a notice of motion, and my memory of it was that the memorandum of understandings that going forward were going to be looked at to see if there could be ways of making sure that soccer clubs might be able to arrange with other tenants to leave memorabilia, and so I was seeking some information from the relevant director as to whether that has in fact transpired. But I appreciate that there's not a report that captures point E, and therefore it's difficult to seek that point of clarification. So I appreciate that. No, that's perfectly understandable. I guess I'll just close then, Mayor, if I may. I guess in closing, though, I don't accept that reason as a legitimate argument against the particular amendment. That point has been raised, and I will follow up after the meeting as to how we can, if that's an issue, if clubs are feeling, if that's a real issue for clubs, but being able to leave memorabilia in a particular pavilion, that is something that's come to the chamber, and that is something that councillors have sought some ways of addressing, and I'm not sure that that's a sufficient reason to go down the route that that was put forward by Councillor Sharp. I actually think that my amendment is in fact allowing for the report to capture the aspects that point E sought to or seeks to seek information on, which is how do we achieve year-round access to soccer facilities for soccer clubs? And one of the mechanisms has been the allocation policy. But if there are other problems, and if those particular ways of addressing them haven't yet come back to us, well, I do think that the challenge is set out, challenge for year-round access to soccer facilities, allows for all of those questions to be answered in the report. So I don't think that the amendment is precluding any of the information. It's trying to, I guess, make sure that our officers have clearer direction from us rather than this real scattergun request for all sorts of reports to address similar questions in different ways. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. So I'm just putting the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Isa and Councillor Hodgson. All those against? That is Councillor Nation, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Byrne. That amendment is lost. We will move back to the substantive, of which I have it moved by Councillor Sharp, seconded by Councillor Sypek, and spoken to by those two and by Councillor Nation. Would anybody else like to speak to the substantive? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, notwithstanding my comments about the point E, which is still part of the substantive, I suppose I did just want to make a comment that, in speaking about that point E, Councillor Nation indicated that the challenge posed at the moment was currently keeping kids off the ground. I stand by my belief that the seasonal allocation policy has addressed that issue. Soccer clubs are able to access a summer allocation if there's a need for competition requirements, including kids who are registered to play and need to get on the ground. I just want the community to understand that that is something that we have sought to address on a really short-term solution. The statement that categorically all other sport clubs have a permanent home is also one that, it doesn't ring true for me. I understand that all other codes, most share facilities across winter and summer seasons with another club, and are required to pack up their, belongings, equipment, facilities, pitches, things, when they vacate for the other summer club or winter club, as the case may be, to come in. So it's not an issue that just affects soccer clubs, but I do understand that there is a desire for soccer clubs to feel like they have belonging, and they are very welcome. I want to be really clear, they are very welcome in Moonee Valley. A soccer hub also doesn't really address that need, is the last point that I would make, because I would hope that if we are able to find the space and the funds and are able to make a soccer hub happen in Moonee Valley, that it's a facility that would be able to be accessed fairly and equitably by all of our soccer clubs, not just by a single premier club in our city. So I suppose those are my hopes for the future of growing soccer in Moonee Valley, and I'll leave my comments there.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would anybody else like to speak on this motion? Councillor Isa.
Can I just ask a point of clarification to the move of the motion? Can I just ask what the move of the motion anticipates the report in point E will cover that wouldn't have been addressed in the amendment?
I don't...
Perhaps I can rephrase. What information is the report in point E seeking to... what information will be in the report in point E that wasn't going to be in the point D report? Because I don't think I understand the difference.
I believe this is a separate report. This is an additional report, which I don't believe was captured in the amendment.
Is that the only perceived difference between the two? I just want to be able to understand the intent of E, because I've obviously misunderstood it, because I thought that I was moving an amendment that captured similar things.
Well, there could be various reasons. So your point of clarification, is there anything else apart from it just being a report?
Yeah, that makes it different to the amendment.
Councillor Sharp.
Point E is self-explanatory.
So, Councillor Isa, that's how Councillor Sharp chooses to respond to that.
Can I speak? Because I don't think I've spoken on the motion.
No, you haven't spoken to the substantive.
So I'm in a real pickle here, because my understanding was that my amendment captured all the aspects of point E, but the fact that it was voted down makes me not clear as to what point E is all about. And I'm a bit nervous about it, to be honest, because it mentions Cross Keys Reserve and Strathnaver Reserve, and I'm not quite sure how to read that. We've had a lot of controversy in the chamber about Cross Keys Reserve, and last year we had an issue come to us, and there was a great deal of angst with Essendon Cricket Club, and I'm a bit nervous now about what it is that point E is seeking to do. And I thought I understood it. I thought it was addressing year-round access to soccer facilities, but now I'm not really sure. And I'm anxious that it's seeking to enliven something that was of great controversy about 12 months ago as an amendment to a motion without any real clarity, I guess, for users of different grounds or myself. So I think, to be cautious, I will probably vote against this motion, because I don't think I understand the intent of point E.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would anybody else like to speak on the substantive? Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. Obviously, we've moved the amendment and I spoke to that, but just in speaking to the substantive, in point E in particular, I think it's a really good addition and very useful because, as I said when speaking to the amendment, there is some immediate needs that need to be decided on. And if we look at the short term that's mentioned in the soccer strategy, it goes from 2022 to 2025. Now, my concerns in speaking with the clubs and understanding their needs is a lot of what they need can't wait to 2025 if that's how long it takes. So the intention, as I understand it, from point E, is to provide council with some tangible options for immediate ratification and so how we can support some of the short-term needs of the clubs. And we know that a big part of that, as it's mentioned, is year-round access, in particular for some of our NPL clubs. Now, given September's coming close to summer allocations, it's a perfect time for us to get that report so that we can put the relevant things in place so that we can ensure that year-round access happens as soon as possible. Because in reality, that needs to happen this year. That's what our clubs are saying to us. We can't wait till 2024. We can't wait till 2025. It needs to happen this year. And we did raise this at the start of our council term, and now we're nearly halfway through. And I personally want something that we can actually enact. I want to make sure that we're actually starting to make things to happen. And now I understand we have a strategy, and I thank officers for putting together a really comprehensive strategy. But I really want to start making some change and making some things happen to help our clubs because they're asking for it and they've been patient enough. And the community is wanting it as well. So for that reason, I think it's great that we're going to have a separate report that specifies the things that we can do in the immediate to very short term. And then we have a strategy that guides the development of our long-term capital works, our long-term budgeting, and that guides us all the way up to 2032. So I think it's a great amendment, Councillor Sharp, and I'm happy to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio.
Excuse me, Mayor. Could I, under Governance Rule 38.1, could I request that the motion be put to the vote in separate parts, please?
Yes. Sure. Would anybody else like to speak on the substantive? No? Councillor Sharp, would you like to close?
Yes, thank you. Focusing on the draft strategy that we have out, if endorsed tonight, it's very positive, and I'm trying to keep the conversation positive, my conversation positive, but when it is mentioned around the table that not every club has a home, and that doesn't ring true to some councillors, and that every code at the end of 6 months is told to pack their things up. I'm not sure how many councillors have entered a football pavilion and have seen all the memorabilia from the footy club, and do you think that at the end of 6 months they take all that memorabilia down and it becomes a cricket pavilion? That doesn't happen. They share and share alike because that is what the codes do. We have cricket season finished at the end of March, and some of them are having presentation nights in the pavilion because that is their home. They share it. Soccer don't have that ability because they don't have a home. And to belittle the argument saying that this is all about leaving memorabilia up, I think is a kick in the guts. And I'm really trying to keep this conversation positive, so I will. At the end of the day, this is asking for a report to try and make the whole engagement of soccer holistic, and so we're looking at all aspects to enable us to make positive change across the municipality for all of our clubs. And that's what I trust this additional report will do, and it's certainly what I trust the draft soccer strategy will do. So I thank councillors in advance for their support of this, because it is only going to make us have more information to enable us to make better decisions down the track. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Now, there was a request for this to be split into motions. Now, Can I just confirm, Councillor Isa, with that request, did you want them each one individually, or were you happy for A, B and C to be together, then D separate, then E separate?
That is fine.
Okay. Okay, so councillors, that was the request, as the request came from Councillor Isa, happy to do so. So we're going to vote on A, B and C together. Then D will be a separate vote, and then E will be a separate vote. Does everyone understand how it will be occurring? Okay, thank you. Okay, as you requested it. So A, B, C and D together, and then E separately. Okay, so I will now now call for the vote for that council resolves to A, B, C and D as per the motion moved by Councillor Sharp. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. And I will now call for the vote for item E for this, which is as per on the screen, E. All those in favour? That is Councillor Nation, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Byrne. All those against? That is Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa. Item E of this resolution is carried. Now, councillors, we are up to 9.5 on the agenda. However, I am mindful that there is provision within the meeting procedures for council to make a resolution to change the order of business. The resolution that I'll be asking would be to move item 9.8, the response to the notice of motion number 2021-25 outdoor pool at Keilor East Leisure Centre. If we could move that up the agenda to be heard next. Can I please have a seconder, a mover and a seconder that occurs? Move Councillor Tyson, seconded Councillor Sypek. I will put that to the vote, that item 9.8 be heard next. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And that was in regards to item 19.1 on the agenda of changing the order of business, just so it can be heard next. Now, I'm also mindful Councillor Nation will depart from the meeting at this point in time. Thank you.
And I believe our governance rules say I have to redeclare, I think, so obviously I have a conflict of interest, reasons previously disclosed to the CEO in writing before the commencement of the meeting, so I will drop off now.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. So we are at 9.8 on the agenda, which is the response to notice of motion number 2021-25 outdoor pool at Keilor East Leisure Centre. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Tyson.
I'll move an alternative to the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson.
I move that Council resolves to A, note the findings of the report detailing the costs, benefits, impacts and community engagement outcomes associated with operating the outdoor pool at Keilor East Leisure Centre for year-round use. B, extend operation and heating of the outdoor pool by an additional 4 months per year from September to May on a trial basis for 12 months. C, report back results of the trial to Council in 2023 with respect to usage, costs and community satisfaction. D, investigate including a voucher for single-use entry of new users to the Keilor East Leisure Centre for all ratepayers of the City of Moonee Valley contained with rate notices as part of the 2022-23 budget process. And E, communicate to all registered users of Keilor East Leisure Centre the content of this resolution by Council.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek.
Yes, thank you, Madam. I just want a point of clarification. Did you say that the pool should be remained open all year round?
So, Councillor Sypek, so what Councillor Tyson has moved is that no, the pool won't be remaining open all year round, just September to May.
I misheard.
So, were you willing to second this motion?
Yeah, I'm willing to second this motion with a slight alternative to...
Sorry, Councillor Sypek. My suggestion would be that if you wanted to have an amendment to this, probably don't second it. If somebody else was to second it, then you could move something later.
Okay.
Yep. So, Councillor Sypek, you're not seconding it?
No.
No? Okay, but we do have it moved by Councillor Tyson. Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Sharp. Okay. Now, Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Sharp. I know where Councillor Sypek is going with this, and it definitely was a line ball decision for me. I think what is important is that the officer's recommendation here is to leave the pool as it currently is, operating 5 months a year. By extending it an additional 4, I think that's a good baseline for the community while measuring the cost associated with it. I know a lot of survey respondents, and there was a huge response from the community on this issue, that as I feel that when the costs exceed more than $300,000 per year, that's probably the point where it should be a bit more line ball. So I think I'm supportive of wherever this motion lands in terms of an extension. Happy to be guided by colleagues as to where they're sitting. I probably think that it would be Councillor Sypek's amendment that I'm sure he will move to extend it to year round. I'll support that if that's what colleagues decide. I'll support the substantive motion, that is. But I do think that from the financial cost here, less than $300,000 net loss per year is probably more acceptable to me than further. In terms of talking through the rest of the motion, I think to trial this is very important. I want to see increased patronage. I want this to work, and I think we all agree about extending the length that this pool is open. You don't spend millions of dollars building this facility only to half measure things going forward after it's complete. In point D, regarding a voucher for single use, in talking to members of the community, and as pointed out in the report about the low catchment area of the East Keele Leisure Centre, that a lot of our community don't know about this beautiful facility. We've spent a lot of money on this. It is incredible. It's modern, state-of-the-art, and I think by including a one-time voucher in rates notices, it'll increase usage across the municipality, give everyone in our community a chance to check it out, and hopefully sign up for an ongoing membership. I'd add as well that if councillors are supportive of my 4-month extension, if there is increased patronage and it does have the desired effect, I'm keen to extend that. But I just think from my perspective, we do need to balance the financial cost. I really want this to be a success regardless, and looking forward to the debate. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to support this. I think we, really need to invest in our pool. Well, not that we haven't invested in it, but I think that we've opened it and we haven't really done much marketing. There was a gentleman who posted on Facebook a couple of weeks ago talking about the outdoor pool and how beautiful it was and trying to get people involved. And from what I saw, and I haven't checked back, I just saw it come up, there was heaps of comments on there, and a lot of people didn't even realise that it was open, let alone heated. So I'm extremely happy to see us at least trialling this, and I actually think we'll get a lot of buy-in from our community once they actually realise that it is open all year and it's heated. I think it will be welcomed by our community, and I think Councillor Tyson's point D about a voucher for a single-use entry, I like that. It's good. It's something different, something we've never done before. And if we, it's going to invite people in. You never know how many memberships or how many people might, keep going there once they actually go up there and have a look at it. And by us incentivising that, I think that's a really good think out of the box thing, actually. So well done, Councillor Tyson. I like it. I'll leave it there, I guess, but certainly happy to see this
Thank you, Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move an alternative.
An amendment, yes?
Amendment, yes. In point B, that I would like extend the operations of the pool and the heating of the outdoor pool on a trial basis for 12 months until the end of May 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. So just so we've got the words correct as what's on the screen, so B is replaced with extend operation and the heating of the outdoor pool on a trial basis for 12 months until the end of May 2023. Yep.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Great, thank you. That amendment is moved, Councillor Sypek. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Bettio. Councillor Sypek, would you just like to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we've all in our lifetimes built a house, and we've all built a house with the 4 bedrooms and 2 toilets and a beautiful rumpus room. Well, that's what we've got here, Madam Mayor. We've got a $50+ million facility we've built with 4 bedrooms, 2 toilets and an outdoor rumpus room, and we're not going to use it all year round. I've been a member of the East Killers since the day it opened, and I go there pretty much a few times a week, and I hear a lot of people talk to me about how they like the facility, how they don't like the facility, what they like about it, what they want to see with it. And unfortunately, I've had 2 perforated eardrums from all the people talking to me about these things. And the most common thing is I want to swim in the outside pool all year round. Now, I thought about this, I thought about opening up, and I thought about the finances that Councillor Tyson said, and I think there is justification there to run it on a trial basis for 12 months. Let's see how it goes. And if the patronage does pick up, great, it's a win-win for everyone. If it doesn't pick up, well, there's justification there to say that there's probably no need to keep the pool open all year round. But from the information that I've personally gained, I think there's going to be quite a good uptake of using the outdoor 50-metre pool. So, Madam Mayor, I'm seeking support from my colleagues for a trial basis. I think we've got a beautiful jewel in the crown with the East Kill Leisure Centre, and I think we should use it to the absolute maximum that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Bettio on the amendment.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be brief. I think, as Councillor Sypek said, we've spent $50 million plus on, I guess, what is our premier leisure facility in our municipality, and a big part of that is our outdoor pool. I think keeping it open year round and giving people the option to come year round and trying to grow that part of the business, essentially, because it is, in some respects, a business, is really important. So that, not much more to add. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bettio. Would anybody else like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I won't be supporting this amendment. First of all, I just wanted to let, in response to Councillor Sypek's comments, I know made in jest about perforated eardrums. As a child who suffered from ear troubles and perforated eardrums, they're quite funny, and certainly not to submerge your head underwater if you do have a couple of perforated eardrums. So stay out of the pool, Councillor Sypek, if that's the case. This, I think, I agree with Councillor Tyson's original comments around the trial basis this year happening for a shoulder season. It's a really impressive facility out at Keilor East Leisure Centre, and I think already we've operated beyond what was envisaged as a seasonal opening, and we can see that there is still use for the pool. The outdoor pool swimming community is strident and passionate about swimming outdoors. I've had conversations today about the, indoor versus outdoor arguments, and I personally am an outdoor swimmer myself, but I too want to see this trial succeed, and one of the factors I think around making it economically viable to open year-round might be about regular hirers and squads, and I'd be interested to see how we go this time round if we extended the operation by 4 months, and I would be open to having a look at, if that's successful, extending that to year-round next winter, when we might have a bit more lead time to discuss with squads and regular hirers, swimming clubs, about their interest in using the pool and bringing in that income. There is a significant cost to particularly the winter month operation with the heating of the pool. It's a cost both to our operational budget and to the environment, as detailed in the report, trebling the carbon emissions. But so for me, this extension is something I'm definitely keen to see whether the community benefit outweighs the cost to council in both those aspects. But the full year round, I'm just not sure that we're quite ready to take that plunge. And I'd be interested in seeing the 4 month a year trial with, if that goes well, having a look at year round in next year.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. I think we did all hear that pun that you put in. Would anybody else like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Tyson.
Thanks, Mayor. And as I said, look, I think whether we're going from 5 months to 9 months or 5 months to 12 months, regardless, this is a great outcome for our community. I really hope whatever option we go with increases patronage to the facility. I know that Mayor, either you or I originally brought up this notice of motion and the other person seconded it, the other councillor seconded it. This is something that we're very passionate about. Our community in Rosehill are very passionate about it. I think my thinking is aligned with Councillor Hodgson. I am slightly concerned that going 12 months might then bring back the results of a trial in a year that maybe aren't as favourable to extend things or keep it extended, in some ways overextending ourselves. I think 9 months is sensible, and we can then scale up if it is a great success. As I said, though, I will be supporting whatever my colleagues decide, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Would anybody else like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm just speaking to the amendment, so the movement from 4 months to 12 months. I don't support the 12-month trial at this point. In 2016, Council made a decision not to put in place the heating to support the 12 months of operation. So we don't have the heating mechanisms to support efficient heating of the pool in the winter months, which are the hardest months in Melbourne to endure in many regards, perforated eardrums or not. So I think moving from 4 months to 12 months, having previously made decisions not to put in place the infrastructure to do that, and with information before us about the cost of that, we know from the report that the cost per visit at this point will be an extra $7.85. That's on the figures that are available in the report, the public report. That's a very big cost per visit for this trial. The carbon cost, we know without that efficient heating, and some question marks about the use of the pool cover. I'm just not quite sure whether the pool cover's being used and whether that's been factored in or not. So I take it there might be some efficiencies that we're missing in the information before us, and be glad if that were the case, that it could be improved. But the impact on our carbon neutrality that we're so proud of trying to heat this outdoor pool for 3 months in winter, I can't support that. not when we know that we're not doing enough across Australia with respect to carbon emissions, and we've got something that we can clearly decide to do or not to do that has a direct impact on our council carbon emissions. I'll reserve my other comments about the motion for later. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would anyone else like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Sharp.
I was happy to support 4 months, certainly happy to support 6 months, as in 12 months of the year, an extra 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. I believe everybody has spoken on the amendment. The amendment was moved by Councillor Sypek, so Councillor Sypek, would you like to close on the amendment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to have some closing comments. Extending this by 12 months, I wouldn't consider that a plunge. I would consider that dipping our toe for 12 months, not a plunge, Madam Mayor. And on the comment that I made about perforated eardrums, well, as a child, I suffered from ear problems as well. I had grommets in my ears when I was a young boy. And then when I got older, I actually had perforated eardrums because I was in an accident, and I won't explain it why, and I had to have them fixed. So I'm pretty much an expert on perforated eardrums, Madam Mayor. And that was only just an ingest, and I was either going to say perforated eardrums or someone's chewing my ear off. It was one or the other. So it wasn't made in any untowards to anyone, but I was just a little bit disappointed in that comment, Madam Mayor. So in closing, I think a 12-month trial basis, I think we'll get the facts and figures after the 12 months. And if it's a good thing, fantastic. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But one thing here, Madam Mayor, when we build leisure centres, we don't build leisure centres for profit and to save money. We build leisure centres to provide a service, Madam Mayor. And one of the services that's been asked by the community to us is to have the 50-metre pool opened for 12 months a year. So let's do it.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. So, councillors, we are just putting I'm putting the amendment to the vote. So all those in favour of the amendment, that is Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Byrne. All those against the amendment is Councillor Tyson, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa. That amendment is carried. We'll now move back to the substantive. I have Councillor Tyson and Councillor Sharp have spoken on the substantive. Would anybody else like to speak on the substantive? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment which I had sent it round earlier, but I'm just sending it round again just so that it's at Governance has it handy. But that's attached to the wrong motion there on the screen.
Thank you. So,
just needs to come off and be an additional point.
Thank you. So if you could just read it out for everyone who's tuning in at home.
Yes, certainly. So the additional point F that reads, request the CEO to report back to Council on 1, the availability of indoor and outdoor lap lanes for community use when the 50-metre pool is open and closed, and 2, the process being undertaken to ensure fair and equitable allocation of indoor and outdoor lanes for use by swim clubs / squads such that accessibility, such should be on a different line so that it's the end of the sentence. So if just such is the end of point F, if just press return there, such that accessibility, but without the 3 in front of it, such that accessibility for community and a range of clubs is maximised. I'll read that again. So the request is that the CEO report back to Council on 1, the availability of indoor and outdoor lap lanes for community use when the 50-metre pool is open and closed, and 2, the processes being undertaken to ensure fair and equitable allocation of indoor and outdoor lanes for use by swim clubs, squads, and then such that accessibility for community and a range of clubs is maximised.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. I believe that's quite clear and people can see that on the screen. Is that right? Everyone can see it? Yes. So that amendment is moved by Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Thanks, Mayor. And I appreciate that anyone watching at home can't see the words on the screen, and people have in fact asked if there's ways that we could make those words available to them, but I'll just try to outline it so that my amendment is clear to people listening. What I'm seeking in the amendment is a report from the CEO that clarifies for us how many indoor and outdoor lap lanes are available for community to use if the 50-metre pool is open, and then when it is closed. We've had some feedback around the number of lap lanes that are open for community use in the morning when squads or clubs and aqua play or movement classes or aqua aerobics are on, and I'd really value some clarity on exactly how many lanes are available for community use indoors and outdoors in the different scenarios. And I'd also really value some further clarity if we are going to open up the 50-metre pool all year. I would like some clarity on the processes that would be undertaken so that the allocation of the lanes for use by swimming clubs training is really fair and equitable, because I understand it was hotly contested, and if we're opening up more lanes outdoors, I'd really like to, I would like to imagine that the access and the allocation of those lanes would be opened up as well, so that if that outdoor pool is open, all clubs can again have the possibility of being allocated those lanes, whether it's indoor or outdoor, just to make it really fair. And yes, so the report is around maximising, or the report is seeking the information, really clear information, so that we can be sure as a council that we know what access our community and different clubs in the municipality have to the pool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, firstly, I'd just like to issue an apology to Councillor Sypek. I certainly didn't mean my comments in anything other than the spirit that yours were, so I apologise that it was taken badly. Look, I'm supportive of this amendment because of the issue that is probably why I'm an outdoor swimmer. The indoor lap lanes, particularly during winter when a lot of organised swimming occurs, means that the congestion that you can experience from swimming, or the claustrophobia that I experience when I'm swimming in an indoor pool, is heightened. When we are increasing the availability of lanes, we want to make sure that we're allowing that to be used for maximum community benefit. And I do think, there is a financial advantage to this as well. If we get a few regular hirers in there, knowing that, if they're community groups, they'll be hopefully looked after in a community facility, but they're, as much as we can, we want to make sure that this is a viable trial, and we want to see the maximum use of those lanes. Now, if there is space outside, there's still community lanes accessed. It might also relieve some of the pressure on the indoor pool, but I think it's a really important addition to making sure that we're looking at this trial holistically and making sure that the outcomes of it have the potential to return, results that make this viable long term.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would anybody else like to speak to this amendment? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm extremely concerned about the words used here, because for me, this is completely operational. we as a council don't get involved in the lanes, the allocation of said lanes, the clubs/squads that use the facility. That is contracted out. I'm very concerned that this could even raise legal issues. I'm really concerned about that. And I really and truly don't understand at all the intent of it. Does that mean that, if you're looking at different codes, does that mean that we're looking at, say, we have a hockey pitch and, we're going to let 3 other clubs use the one hockey pitch? That's akin to what this is saying here in regards to swim clubs and squads. So I'm not supporting this. I'm not supporting anything that is delving into operational and is currently managed by a contract. I'm not voting for this at all. I don't think it's well worded, but I certainly don't think that it's been investigated fully, or the intent is even not at all clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I understand what the idea is behind Councillor Isa's amendment, but that's the whole idea of having a 12-month trial. After the trial, there will be a report, and they'll cover all this. So, in my mind, I tend to agree a bit with Councillor Sharp here. We're crossing over some legal boundaries here, and I really don't want to get into a legal battle with the management of the centre, and we have outsourced the management of the centre. If this was managed by council, yes, 100%, I agree with this. We can do it straight away. But because it's outsourced, we are now crossing some boundaries here, and I feel very, very uncomfortable with this. So, Madam Mayor, when we go to vote on this, could we separate the votes as well? So, because I want to make sure that my name's not recorded as crossing legal boundaries.
Yes, we can separate the vote. I'll be separating the amendment, yes. Councillor Tyson.
Mayor, through you, either to the CEO or Manager of Legal and Governance, whether, as Councillor Sypek and Sharp have indicated, whether this motion is illegal or against the Code of Conduct or unimplementable.
It's not Code of Conduct, I'm just saying.
I think they're
illegal.
more saying whether it crosses into the operational boundaries. Is that what your point of clarification
Yes.
is? I will ask for the CEO to respond, please.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, as the proposed motion requests a report back, so I'm not concerned. Thank you.
Not concerned? Thank you. So on the amendment, we have had Councillor Isa, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Sypek speak. Would anybody else like to speak on the amendment?
If I can, Mayor, can I just seek a
Video?
point of clarification through to the mover of the amendment?
Yes.
Just as to the mover's intention or what she hopes will be delivered in this report. I'm a little bit concerned as to the outcome. Confused, sorry, not concerned.
I'm happy to ask that, but I am mindful that it is there. But if you had anything you
I'm
wanted
happy
to
to
add.
answer. That's fine.
Okay, yep.
So we had received some feedback that outlined very scarce usage of indoor and outdoor lap lanes for community use. We then got some additional information about that conflicted with the feedback that we had been given by a user group. So I don't feel at this point in time that I have a real clear understanding of what the availability of indoor and outdoor lap lane use is for community use when the 50 metre pool is currently open, and then what that would be if it was closed, because those figures were provided to us in some feedback, and yet that conflicted with some other information we were given. So that the first point is really to seek some clarity, a report that really gives us real clarity over how many lanes are available for community use in the indoor pool and outdoor pool when the pool is open and when the pool is closed. The second point is very much the same around sort of clarity of that information, but also that so there was a expression of interest that went out seeking for usage of the indoor pool, and it was only available for one winner of that because of the closure of the outdoor pool. So really what I want to understand is, if we open up the outdoor pool, does that mean that it will be available to more clubs or squads, which can bring in more revenue? Certainly after the expression of interest was awarded, I received some feedback from community members that they were frustrated that we'd built this beautiful new pool, but only one club could use it, or one user could win the tender. So that's the purpose of the second point. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Isaac. Councillor Bedio, I believe that answers your point of clarification?
Yes.
Now, Councillor Bedio, were you speaking on this amendment? No? So we have had Councillor Isaac, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Sharp and Councillor Sypek speak to the amendment. Would anybody else like to speak to the amendment? No? Councillor Isaac, would you like to close your amendment?
Mayor, if I may just ask the CEO, because the point was, a query was raised as to whether this raises any legal issues, and I would just like to seek clarification from the CEO as to whether it raises any legal issues, because I certainly don't want to move a motion that would raise any legal issues.
I believe
it was asked whether it was you did ask that, but the answer that was given was that it was confined to whether it was operational. So I would just like some clarity on whether there are any legal issues.
CEO, if you're happy to respond.
Thank you, Susan Mayor. Similar to my response to the last question, it's a proposed motion, request a report back rather than do things. So, although I don't have the detail of a contract with the operator, I don't think there's a legal issue for us to report on whether we can or cannot, or what is currently. Thank you.
Thank you. And that answers your point of clarification?
Thanks very much, Mayor. And I think, look, I've spoken enough on the matter. It's fine. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll put that, now there was a request for the amendment to be split. Is that,
Every item to be voted on. A, B, C, D.
So we're still just doing the amendment. Are you happy for the amendment? Did you want point 1 of the amendment and point 2 of the amendment, or are you happy for the whole amendment to be said as a whole?
No, separated.
Okay, so the first amendment that will be separated will be...
Excuse me, Mayor. It's actually just one complete sentence. So
I can split it, because I can have request the CEO report back on the second bit and the last line. So the first bit will be request the CEO to report back to council on the availability of indoor and outdoor lap lanes for the community use when the 50-metre pool is open and closed, such that the accessibility for community and a range of clubs is maximised, if I'm reading that correctly.
I think you'd
That's
have
how
to...
I'm interpreting...
Well, the range of clubs relates to point 2 and the accessibility for the community relates to point 1. So it would have to be closed such that accessibility for the community is maximised, and 2 then would have range of clubs is maximised.
Okay, no, there's been a request. I want to try to make sure that I'm consistent, and if a councillor wants it separated, I believe there is a way it can be. So the first amendment will be request the CEO to report back to council on the availability of indoor and outdoor lap lanes for community use when the 50-metre pool is open and closed, such that accessibility for community is maximised. That is being put to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Tyson, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isaac, Councillor Byrne. The second part to that amendment will be, counted there, and those against is Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Bettio. That part of the amendment is carried. The second amendment, part of the amendment that will go to the vote as it is split, is request the CEO to report back to Council on the process being undertaken to ensure fair and equitable allocation of indoor and outdoor lanes for use by swim clubs/squads, such that accessibility for a range of clubs is maximised. That is how it is split. I will put that part of the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Tyson, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa. All those against? That is Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Bettio, Councillor Byrne. That part of the amendment is lost. So, governance, if we could please have back on to the screen now what the substantive is. If I can just get an indication from governance if they needed a moment to do this. Yep. Whilst that is being put on the screen, I'm happy to say that from the substantive we have had Councillor Tyson move, Councillor Sharp second. Would anybody else like to speak on the substantive, noting that the screen is just getting fixed at the moment? Councillor Isa.
I just had a couple more comments that I'd like to make on the substantive, because I appreciate part of the amendment being supported, and thank colleagues for supporting part of the amendment. I think on balance, though, I had thought that if the amendment was accepted, then that was some sort of give and take. I think with the full amendment not being accepted, I'm not supportive of the substantive motion, and I just wanted to add a few further comments around that. One of those is that I did note that in the consultation report, 75% of the users of the outdoor pool indicated that they'd be happy to use the indoor pool, and while I do support those aspects of the motion that seek to take measures to get more people into the swimming pool. I think that's great. Point D and E, absolutely. Important measures. 75% of users indicating that they were willing to use outdoors, again, just doesn't give me confidence, but we'll see what, I guess, if this gets through, we'll see what the figures from the trial come back as. I'd also just, I guess, express some disappointment here that there's obviously, a keenness to put a great deal of expense behind this, and yet from the draft budget a few weeks ago, $250,000 was slashed from the maintenance budget from the Ascot Vale Leisure Centre. And I guess I would like to think that all councillors around the table look after all of the pools with consistent care, and that there hasn't, this is a motion to put considerable money behind new costs at a brand new pool, whereas the money was taken from the maintenance of a pool that services another part of the municipality. So that's pretty disappointing. On that, I think Councillor Hodgson and myself have spoken about Queen's Park Pool in this mix of need for the municipality as well, and Queen's Park Pool needs a lot of work. It needs a plan, And I think that we'll probably bring something to the chamber soon to again make sure that one of our other assets, one of our other much loved, much used summer swimming assets is given consistent attention and investment. I think that's all. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would anybody else like to speak to the substantive? No.
Am I
Is that a
closing
hand?
this or am I not?
So you haven't actually spoken on the substantive yet. You've only spoken on an amendment, but Councillor Bedio did pop his hand up to speak on the substantive.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add that I in particular, really like the point of the single voucher or the single-use vouchers. I think obviously there is concern around the table about the cost of the extending of the season. However, that's without us actively trying to promote and try to increase the use in the down period. And I think these initiatives like a single-use voucher system, some marketing geared towards getting people into utilising the outdoor pool and communicating that it is open 12 months a year. My best guess is that most people wouldn't actually know that it's open for periods outside of summer. So getting that messaging out there, making sure people know that it's open, utilising our marketing resources, and also putting together these really interesting ideas like Councillor Tyson's put forward for a single-use voucher system, I think will make a lot of difference. And potentially we might find that we get enough buy-in that we're actually not losing any money. And that would be the ideal. So I think we need to go into it hoping that that's going to be the outcome. And yeah, thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Bedio. Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to make a few comments about the East Kill Leisure Centre. There seems to be an idea that this is going to be a cost to us, that it's going to cost us money, that it's that councils has to make a profit out of this. This is a community request. This is not a councillor's request or a council request or whoever's request. This request is coming from the community, and that's true. Bless you. The other thing I wanted to mention is, in 2016, the reason why we didn't heat this pool is because council then thought it was why waste good money on something that's going to have to be renovated and pulled down anyway because the pool's back was broken. That's the reason why we didn't invest any money into heating it, because it wasn't worth it. It was end of life. The old East Kill Leisure Centre was end of life. Built in 1967, Madam Mayor. That's a pretty good run, right? Pretty good run, Madam Mayor. The other comments that were made is, that we're slashing funds from the Ascot Vale Leisure Centre. Well, the Ascot Vale Leisure Centre got built and it costed over $18 million many years ago, and we just kept sinking money into it because we had concrete cancer, we had all sorts of other stuff. Money kept pouring into there, and it was all to the detriment of the East Kill Leisure Centre. And that's the reason why it got neglected, and that's the reason why it fell down, and that's the reason why its end of life came earlier, and that's the reason why we had to build it now. And now that the community have got a fantastic facility, and we're going to say, no, you can only use parts of this facility, I can't understand this. It's a 12-month period, 12-month run. I don't want to cross any boundaries. I don't want to go over operational basis. I just want to service the community, give the community what they want. This is what we do. This is the decisions we make here, Madam Mayor. Why don't we make those decisions? Let's stop mucking around with stuff like this. I'm sick and tired of all these amendments trying to change the actual motion or the actual issue. Why are we doing this? Why are we constantly... I don't know. I don't have the words for it, Madam Mayor, so let's just get to the vote and do it.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would anybody else like to speak to... Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak to the substantive?
Look, Mayor, I'm a little bit lost for words. I think it would be great if council could afford to do everything that the community requests of us. I think the report provides some really interesting feedback from the community on exactly what the community considers is the costs that they would, the majority of survey respondents, I should say, not the whole community, consider is the cost that would outweigh the benefit. the amendment that that failed sought to try and understand what we might be able to recoup and what benefit we might be able to achieve by doing this, but that wasn't supported by the majority of councillors here around the table, which is obviously of disappointment. But to me now, my comments about the extension to a 7-month extension of the season to year-round, I think it's a bit premature. I think that cost outweighs that benefit. I'm sure that we will be able to see this trial because I can see how this is all going, and I hope to be proven wrong.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Now, I am mindful that right now everybody has spoken on the substantive. So in that case, we will go back to Councillor Tyson, who can close.
Thanks, Mayor. As I said, I thought that this was coming in terms of the change, and I had my view, but as Councillor Bedio said, I hope this increases memberships. I hope this increases revenue. I want this pool to be profitable. I'll be supporting this motion in its entirety. I really want us to do very well out of this, our community to do very well out of this. I'd say to our community, if you want this in an ongoing way, come, join, swim in the pool, because this is really, as Councillor Hodgson sort of touched on, I don't want to be here in 12 months and have the report back and says, this was a failure, this cost a lot of money for no benefit. I really want this to succeed. Thanks to everyone in the community who have contacted me about this. I've had some really interesting, extensive discussions. My suggestion of a voucher of single use, I think, is about following through. We spend all this money, we need to market ourselves. The community needs to know what we've done with their money and for them to see that. So look, I'm absolutely supportive. I'm really glad from start to finish, Mayor, you and I raising this issue probably 6 months ago now, and really grateful for all the interesting, thoughtful conversations I've had with community members. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. So I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson, Councillor Bedio, Councillor Byrne. All those against? Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa. That motion is carried. We will now go back to the agenda. We are back to item 9.5 and we'll wait for Councillor Nation to rejoin us. If somebody can please communicate with Councillor Nation. For those who are joining us online, we just had a slight change in the order of the agenda where we went to 9.4, then we jumped to 9.8, and now we are back to item 9.5. And I do believe we have Councillor Nation back. I can see the name on the screen. We'll just wait until the screen pops up properly. If Councillor Nation can hear and turn his camera on. I believe we have Councillor Nation back. Okay, so item 9.5 on the agenda is the Local Law Amendment 2022. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an additional point C that reads, request the Chief Executive Officer to provide a report to Council by June 2023 on the progress of state government legislation to repeal public drunkenness laws and any consequent advice or plans to adjust Moonee Valley City Council local laws to be in line with this. This update should also include consideration of .point 1, Recommendation 84 of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody. .point 2, lessons learnt from the state government trials of a health response to public intoxication being run in the City of Yarra, City of Greater Dandenong, City of Greater Shepparton and Castlemaine. I hope I said that right, sorry, Castlemaine Township. And .point 3, the original intent of the laws is to protect residential the original intent of the laws to protect residential amenities from antisocial behaviour and whether appropriate measures are available to manage this.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Tyson. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Look, this matter originally came, as the report details, originally came to us as a little bit of a anomaly or a question mark over our drinking in public laws and whether or not people in the municipality could drink in our in specific areas without needing a permit. So we amended a map to make basically the whole municipality covered by an alcohol restriction area, meaning drinking alcohol was prohibited in public places between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m, with particular additional restrictions around some of our major event areas. The report is a really good one. It responds to some councillor feedback around making sure that our local laws aren't heavy-handed and that they are in fact in line with some reforms happening at the state government level around decriminalising public drunkenness. The repeal of public drunkenness is something that was recommended through the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody, which is 21 years old now. Victoria is one of the last jurisdictions to still have public drunkenness laws, so it's an overdue and well-needed reform. And what that reform will do is also improve access to health services and outreach workers to respond to public drunkenness or public intoxication, because it's not always just alcohol, public intoxication as a health issue. And it responds to the fact that, you know, people who are charged with public drunkenness offences often fall into, are often our most vulnerable people. So they are vulnerable cohorts, including Aboriginal people, homeless people, and people with complex health and mental health needs. So we want to make sure that as the City of Moonee Valley, we are responding appropriately to this shifting landscape of dealing with intoxication in public places. And we want to make sure we do that in a way that still responds to any amenity and public safety concerns that residents might have. For that reason, you know, the officers have recommended that we don't do anything now, that we wait until we see what new resources and mechanisms might be in place because of this statewide reform. And trials are being undertaken in 4 areas. City of Yarra being quite close to us, and perhaps we'll have some lessons that are really valuable to Moonee Valley in terms of how we manage this and how it might look in an inner city municipality. But I'm sure that the lessons learned from City of Greater Dandenong, Shepparton and Castlemaine will also have some important implications for us. So I think it's really good that officers have taken that on board and have given us this recommendation. I just want to make sure that it doesn't fall off the radar for us as a council group. And so my addition to request a report by June 2023 is just so that we can keep a track of what's going on, how it might affect us. And we don't want to have these laws around for any longer than we need them if they are potentially, you know, causing harm for our community. They were put in to try and address a problem that we had at the time. And at the moment, the report indicates that the laws aren't in very high use. In fact, an infringement notice hasn't been issued for at least a decade. So we understand that it's not a key public safety or amenity concern at the moment, and in the way that this law is being implemented. But we don't want to have laws around just for law's sake. We want to know exactly what their purpose is, and if it's not still serving a purpose and an intent, or if there's an alternative and better way to address that issue, we want to make sure that we're doing that and not putting anyone at risk. The recommendation 84 of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody, just for those who may not have it to hand, is that issues related to public drinking should be the subject of negotiation between police, local government bodies and representative Aboriginal organisations, including Aboriginal legal services, with a view to producing a generally acceptable plan. I consider that this is a pretty related one. It is one that falls on our shoulders as a local government body, and one that I think that we could turn a mind to while we consider an amendment in future to this local law. I think that covers all of the parts of it, and I'm out of time. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Tyson.
Thank you, Mayor. And it's obvious Councillor Hodgson's passion for this area, and she is being humbled to a degree because she is something of a subject matter expert in this field in her day job. And so I think I couldn't have said it any better myself, and I agree completely.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Would anybody else like to speak on this item? Councillor Nation, was that a no?
Oh no, I was just showing something, but I will speak. Thank you. So I think that this issue has, and specifically how we've got to this point, not the changes to the state government, the law and state government legislation, but how we got to this point, and the work we've had to do to actually change our internal mapping in terms of what's permitted under our local laws. And we won't bore you with the history, but we know that we've been monitoring this over the past, what's it been, maybe 3 or 4 years, and particularly in 2021 when we were required to bring the motion through chambers to look at addressing the inconsistencies within our local laws. But that was obviously the catalyst, as was the Decriminalisation of Public Drunkenness Act, which Councillor Hodgson has touched on, and which will now give us scope to further amend our local laws. I think a councillor colleague of ours put it well, saying last week there's no point just having a law for the sake of it, and I think that that's important, that we look at our local laws and we actually look at those that are providing benefit and those that are serving a purpose, and those that are potentially not serving a purpose and having detrimental impacts on different members of our community, and or actually making issues more challenging for members of the police force who might be trying to address matters. So I support the officer's rec, but I obviously support the amended or the alternative motion that's before us, and appreciate the work Councillor Hodgson has put into the motion to ensure that it doesn't fall off the radar, because as we know as councillors there's a lot of things we have to get our head across. So to ensure that we keep track of what other municipal areas are doing when the legislation actually properly comes into place, and then what changes we can make as a council. And I like that we are not being reactive, but we're being proactive in this case, and I think that's a real positive. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would anybody else like to speak on this item? No. Councillor Hodgson, would you like to close? No. In that case, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 9.6 on the agenda is the sports field floodlight audit findings. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Bedio.
Sorry, Mayor, if you give me 2 seconds, I just need to pull it up. We'll move the officer's recommendation with a slight amendment. I've just lost it on my computer.
Which one are we doing? I haven't got it here. It's missing.
Yeah, that's information.
1.5.
So we haven't seen this.
Oh, no, I haven't.
Councillor Bedio, do you have your...
Yep, sorry, I have it here, Mayor. So I'll move the officer's recommendation with an additional point, additional sentence at the end. Sorry, I'll just pull that up.
How about this?
To state that Council authorises officers to address any detected errors in Attachment 1.
Thank you. Has that been sent through to governance?
No, it's been sent through. Yes, I'll forward it across to governance now.
Thank you. Now that's been forwarded. I think that was fairly easy to grasp. Thank you, Councillor Bedio. So moved. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Tyson. Councillor Bedio, would you like to speak?
Sorry, Mayor, just a point of clarification. I'm just seeking what the actual motion is before us. I just missed
yes, certainly. So it is that Council notes the report for use as input for future planning and funding applications for sports field lighting projects and authorises officers to address any detected errors in Attachment 1.
Cool. Thank you.
Everyone else is now up on the screen. Yes. Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be brief. The motion is pretty self-explanatory. So officers and consultants undertook an assessment and an audit of all sporting lighting across the municipality. Obviously, depending on the type of sporting codes that you play, different lux ratings, which is essentially the luminosity, how bright the lights are, is required depending on each sport and depending on the code. Now, what's been detected is that not all of our sports lighting are up to scratch to meet the requirements of the code. And now, as much as we'd like to go out and invest as much money as we can to overhaul all the sports lighting, unfortunately we can't, so it needed to be done and assessed under priority. And there was a few aspects that officers considered to assess the priority for funding. Now, the reason for my addition at the end to the officer's recommendation is because I have been contacted just before the meeting by sporting clubs that believe that some elements of the report may be incorrect. So I just wanted to make sure that officers had the ability to go back to the report and amend things like participation rates and that sort of thing if needed.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Councillor Tyson. Would any other councillor like to speak on this item? Councillor Isa.
Look, it's really useful to have. I think we've been waiting for some time for this report, and the clubs have been very patient in waiting to sort of see this audit. I mean, it's really validates clubs' concerns that many of our fields don't have that uniformity of light that actually enables them to do their training and have their matches. And we've talked often in the chamber about how if the lighting could be, well, one, more efficient and save on energy costs and also obviously emissions, and then two, actually have the capacity to, for games or competition, we could spread out matches across different night matches and allow for some different usage of the ovals. So I think none of us are surprised to read the report, to read the number of fields that actually need attention. It's obviously going to cost some money and time to address these issues, but I'm glad we've actually got the data before us to do the designs, to make the improvements. I guess I haven't been privy to any information that's come through, and I think it is convention that anything that I guess makes its way to a motion and is important information is actually shared with all councillors so that we all have the same information before making a decision. So could I just ask for that information that was sent to be shared with all councillors? And I would probably just like to add to the motion an amendment to say authorises officers to address any detected errors in Attachment 1 and advise councillors of these, given that we are noting, and advise, so I'll move an amendment.
Yep.
To finish the sentence with, and advise councillors of any changes.
Okay, so that amendment is put by Councillor Isa.
Do I need to send that through, or is that okay?
Seconder for that amendment? Councillor Sypek. Seconded. Councillor Isa, did you want to
speak to the amendment? Just that we're noting the report. The report is as read as we have it, so I'm happy to authorise officers to make changes and I trust officers to make changes based on evidence and if there are any errors they would need to be changed. But given that we are as a council noting the report, I'd like to make sure that we're advised of any changes that are made, and I would like to request that any information that was circulated prior to the meeting be shared with all councillors, please, as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Sypek on the amendment? No. Anybody else on the amendment? Councillor Bedio?
Just to clarify, officers didn't share with me any information that wasn't shared to other councillors. I was contacted by a sporting club as soon as the meeting started, hence why I looked like I was in a bit of a mad rush to try and put something together. So I just want to make sure that there's no inference that I am misleading or hiding information to other councillors. That's not the case at all.
Councillor Bedio, we're just speaking on the amendment. Would anybody else like to speak on the amendment? No. Councillor Isa, would you like to close?
Sorry, I've got my hand up.
Sorry, Councillor Nation.
No, it's all right. I just wanted to clarification. Can you read out the amendment for me?
Yes.
Please?
So the amendment at the end of the sentence is "and advise councillors of any changes."
And it not striking anything out, just that it...
The only thing that's struck out is the full stop. Yeah.
Thank you. Perfect. No need to speak.
No. Okay. Now, I don't believe anybody else was speaking on the amendment. No. Councillor Isa, would you like to close on the amendment?
Just briefly, the full stop's not struck out. It's just
no, it's kind of put in, isn't it? Yeah.
Just to be clear on grammatical edits there, Mayor, I'm not striking any full stops. And look, I wasn't inferring anything other than an amendment or an amendment to the officer's recommendation has been changed on the basis of some information, and I was just really requesting that information be shared with all councillors so that we can be as informed as the mover of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll put the amendment with the full stop to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously, that amendment. We move back to the substantive. Councillor Isa, you had the floor with 1:33 to go. I think I finished. You'd finished? Okay. Would anybody else like to speak to the substantive? No. Councillor Bedio, would you like to close? No. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. We are now up to 9.7, Councillor Nation.
Yes, I've got a previously disclosed conflict for reasons given to the CEO in writing, so I will drop out of this item.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Nation has left the room, so item 9.7 on the agenda is the Move Riverside Golf and Sports Management Contract Extension. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Tyson?
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. As you remember, the issue of Riverside came up last year and I put a position forward about bringing it in-house. Obviously that was unsuccessful, and what has been the case since has been a bridging contract operated in an outsourced capacity. Due to a few technical issues, consultation, as well as obviously lockdowns and COVID, we haven't been successful in progressing to the point where we would have liked to have been when this originally came up. And so this motion is about extending the bridging contract by 9 months in order to go through the I believe we've finished the expression of interest process, but the tender process itself to get something before council. So not ideal, but happy to support.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. Councillor Hodgson?
Look, thanks. I'd just support Councillor Tyson's comments and just add that, it gives me greater comfort to extend this bridging contract with the existing operator given that the officers have indicated that the performance is satisfactory and user group satisfaction with the facilities is also improved since, when the the management of the facility last came to council. So that's a good thing, although I do look forward to some more permanent arrangements, hopefully in the near future.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would anybody else like to speak to this motion? Councillor Tyson, would you like to close? I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. We can invite Councillor Nation back into the room, please. Whilst we're doing that, for those who are joining us online, we did shuffle the agenda earlier on, and we did item 9.8, the response to the outdoor pool at the Keilor East Leisure Centre, earlier on in the night. So whilst you just heard 9.7, we have done 9.8 already. So therefore we're moving back to 9.9, and we have Councillor Nation back in the room. So item 9.9 is the Finance Performance Report, March 2022. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sypek.
Happy to move the officer's recommendation, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. And a seconder, Councillor Bettio. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Once again, this is just a procedural matter, and I'm very comfortable with the report that the officers have put together.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Bettio.
Thanks, Mayor. Not much to add.
Okay. The Finance Performance Report, anyone else? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I was actually really disappointed to see on page 9 of the attachment that there are 3 projects from the 2021-22 program that haven't been implemented yet. They're all in Moonee ward, and my understanding is that, as it says on page 9, they're projects flagged for possible removal from the 2021-22 program without being carried over to 22-23 at all, and they are the Ormond Park Exercise Station Circuit Path, and then it's got in brackets to align with the soccer strategy. MPAC Laneway Lighting Project does say their work's completed as part of another project, and I'll just ask for further details on that after the meeting. And then it's got the Racecourse Road funding, which was the Racecourse Road Streetscape funding. And I'm very disappointed to see that those projects have just going to disappear out of the Capital Works program. And given that we're halfway through the budget submission process and we've got the budget coming back to us in late June, I'm going to seek some more clarity on each of those projects to understand why they've just been dispensed with. Taking the comment there that the MPAC Laneway Lighting Project may be implemented, but the other 2, I'm really disappointed about that. But I would like to very much thank our financial officer at council, who is manages to communicate very complicated financial information to councillors really well, and I really appreciate that. It's a lot of detail for us to work through to make sure that we are on top of all of the financial reports and positions, and I thank the staff and particularly the finance officer for their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would anybody else like to speak on this report? Councillor Sypek, would you like to close? No? I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Item 9.10 is the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meetings. Councillors, do I have a motion? Moved Councillor Bettio. Seconded Councillor Sypek. Councillor Bettio?
Thanks, Mayor. So this motion is just to receive and note the minutes of the meeting for the Audit and Risk Committee, which was held on the 21st of March 2022. The Audit and Risk Committee is an important subcommittee within Council, and that assesses all, takes supports the auditing processes and requirements under the Local Government Act 2020. I'm personally a member of the Audit and Risk Committee. I guess the inclusion of the minutes is for transparency. Other than that, it's very much a procedural matter.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Councillor Sypek? Any other councillor? No, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 9.11 on the agenda is the council loan facility support for Ukrainian displaced persons. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sypek?
Yes, Madam Mayor, happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. And a seconder, Councillor Bedio. Councillor Sypek?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Look, we do have quite a large Ukrainian community within Moonee Valley. We have one of their holy churches in Buckley Street, so happy to support this and happy to support our community.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Bedio.
Thanks, Mayor. This report comes as a response to our urgent business that was raised, that I raised in the last council meeting. The Ukrainian Association, the Association of Ukrainians in Victoria came to council seeking support for space to store donations. They're doing an amazing job supporting displaced people that have come from Ukraine in what is terrible wartime conditions, and supporting them with donations of clothing and items for setting up their new lives, appliances and whatnot. The association came to council asking for some support in finding up to 100 square metres of space for use for at least 12 months to store these donations as they hand them out and as they need. Officers have done an amazing job and have found in excess of 100 square metres. They've found a space in Avondale Heights Community Precinct Stadium of 215 square metres, so more than ample size. So let's hope that the donations continue to roll in and that they're able to store more, and actually able to support the displaced people even more than they are currently. So happy that as a council we're able to support them. I think this is the bare minimum that we can do to support the association, and as I said in the last meeting, if anyone in the community has ideas for ways that we can support people that have gone through horrible conditions in Ukraine, please come to us or come to me or to any of your councillors, and we'll be happily raise that with officers.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Yeah. Would anybody else like to speak? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks to support my colleagues' comments, and let's hope we can fill the 215 square metres. Although I do note, and just want to make clear to those listening, both the Ukrainian Society and the current user group of that space, we understand are quite excited about this. The space really suits their needs, and the user group that does require the space is very happy to share. So it doesn't actually impact their use of the space. They're able to coexist in the space. Just to make sure that everyone was aware that this was really quite an ideal situation, and thank officers for their quick turnaround to facilitate that outcome. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would anybody else like to speak on this one? Councillor Isa?
Just really quickly to thank all of the community members who I know are busy collecting coats and food and other items. Moonee Valley is pretty good at coming to the aid of others in need, and we've all been so distressed watching what's still unfolding in Ukraine, the surrender of Mariupol the other day. It just goes on, and thank you to everyone in Moonee Valley who's pitching in to really support people. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Any other councillor? Councillor Sypek, would you like to close?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I too want to thank the Moonee Valley community, because when the community gets behind certain projects, Moonee Valley does a great job, and that's our community, Madam Mayor. I just also want to thank our community I want to thank them in advance for what they're going to help out the Ukrainian refugees. I also want to thank the Ukrainian church and the Ukrainian community that's in Russell Street. They're doing a great job and we're happy to be on the bandwagon, so I look forward to seeing a great result out of this.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. We have now finished the reports on the agenda, and there are no notices of motion. Item 11 on the agenda is urgent business. Councillors, do we have any urgent business? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would like to move, excuse me, the council resolves that the item, quote, response to a recent fire incident on Miriam Street, Ascot Vale, hyphen, request for an immediate internal audit, end quote, be considered as urgent business as it complies with the Governance Rule 25, urgent business.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. That is fine. I'm just making sure the wording on the screen is correct. Now, before I ask for a seconder, does any councillor have a conflict of interest in the urgent business to be considered? No, and I will ask for a seconder that it be considered urgent. Councillor Bettio? Now, Councillor Nation, would you like to speak on why it needs to be considered urgent?
Thanks, Mayor. So since the distribution of the council meeting agenda, it has come to my attention that a media article by the Herald Sun reported on a house fire on Miriam's Street, Ascot Vale. And the article refers to several failings by council, specifically, quote, 2 homes damaged by fire in Melbourne's inner north could have been spared if a fire hydrant had not been covered during recent road resurfacing works or the local council had acted on their complaints, furious residents say, close quote. Given the urgency of this matter, I believe that the matter cannot safely or conveniently be deferred until the next council meeting. Therefore, I wish to move an urgent business item to request the CEO to undertake an immediate internal audit of...
Mayor.
Sorry.
Excuse me, Mayor, we're only talking about the urgency of the matter.
I believe Councillor Nation is talking about the urgency of the matter.
Was that a point of clarification when I got cut off?
Just one moment, Councillor Nation. I've just got the CEO saying something.
Sorry, is there a point of clarification?
I'm seeking a point of order, please, that I'll seek the,
Sorry, Councillor Nation, there's a point of order.
Reading the words that were given to me by governance to speak to its urgency, they're actually not even prepared by me.
Councillor Nation, when there's a point of order, I need to deal with the point of order.
And it's under clause 55(2) that the debate is irrelevant to the matter under consideration, which is that the matter be urgent. Thank you.
So,
thank you. Councillor Nation, I need to, if you can just wait, as this is a procedural motion.
I opened the sentence with, given the urgency of this matter, I believe these are the words that are prepared by governance.
Thank you. So. There's a point of order in place at the moment. And Councillor Isa, you have said your point of order, apologies, was 55.2.
Mayor, I'm just going from the chart here. I hope it's updated. It's clause 55(2), debate that is irrelevant to the matter under consideration must not be accepted by the Chair.
55.2 is that the debate is irrelevant to the matter of consideration. And under 55.7, I will state the provision, rule, practice or precedent of 55.2 and that I do not rule in favour of the point of order, as I believe that Councillor Nation was referring to the urgency in what he was discussing. Councillor Nation, for you to continue with why it is urgent.
And the sentence I was halfway through before another councillor spoke was, given the urgency of this matter, I believe that the matter cannot safely or conveniently be deferred until the next council meeting. Therefore, I wish to move an item of urgent business to request the CEO to take an immediate internal audit of all recent road resurfacing works and recent complaints regarding hoarding and properties. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Now that was for it to be considered urgent. Councillor Bettio. Councillor Bettio, would you like to speak on being considered urgent?
Nothing further to add, Mayor.
Would anybody else like to speak on it being considered as urgent? No, I will put that to...
Sorry, could I just seek some clarity on... No, it's okay, don't worry. It's right.
I will put that to the vote that the item be considered as urgent. All those in favour? That is Councillor Nation, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson, Councillor Bettio, Councillor Byrne. All those against? Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa. That motion is carried, so it now can be considered as urgent.
Mayor, could I please move a motion at this point?
Yes.
I'd like
Is it
to...
a procedural motion?
Yes, it's a procedural motion, that's correct.
Otherwise, I'd have the floor, so thanks for specifying.
Thank you. I'd like to move a procedural motion that council moves into a motion to move into confidential reports to close the meeting. So the motion I'd like to move is that council resolves to close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 to discuss the urgent business on the basis that the matter is considered confidential under the terms of Section 3(1) of the Local Government Act 2020, as it contains information relating to D, law enforcement information being information which, if released, would be reasonably likely to prejudice the investigation into alleged breach of the law or the fair trial of a hearing over any person, as the item contains information relevant to an ongoing investigation.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. That is moved.
I just get a point of clarification from the CEO?
Yes.
Does this item have to go into confidential, or can it remain open to the public?
That will be for council to decide, but that's the CEO.
Exactly what I'm going to say, Susan Mayor. That's for councillors to determine. Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask a point of clarification?
Yes, Councillor Nation.
Just a point of clarification, maybe to governance through you, the chair. Given that the councillors don't know what the motion is, do you need me to read what the motion will be so they can work out if it would go into confidential? Because I haven't read the motion yet, so I don't know how they would necessarily be able to think that it goes into confidence. So what's the process here through you, the chair?
Well, the process is that the motion is Councillor Isa has moved the motion that it be considered as confidential, which she wanted to move at this point without knowing what the motion is based on what was moved as urgent. And she can do so.
Point of clarification, Mayor. Sorry,
just wait. Councillor Bettio, I was just dealing with Councillor Nation's point of clarification. Does that answer your point of clarification, Councillor Nation?
Yes, so I don't need to read the motion. We vote without knowing what the motion is. That's what...
She understands what the topic of urgent business is, and Councillor Isa has moved her motion.
Okay, right.
Now, Councillor Bettio, you had a point of clarification?
sorry about it. It's fine.
No? So Councillor Isa has moved that it be moved into confidential. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak on why it gets moved into confidential?
Could you just ask other councillors to be quiet, please?
Thanks, Councillor Sypek.
Thanks.
Councillor Isa?
So we do have the motion in front of us, Councillor Nation, as you circulated it earlier tonight, so I'm able to read the words of the motion, and on the advice that we've been given previously and prior, we've been
Sorry, just
Which
a
I
point of
can't
clarification. Am I allowed to just get that advice?
Sorry, Councillor Nation, you can't actually ask a point of clarification while someone's speaking.
Oh, you're right. My apologies, withdrawn.
Thank you,
So
Councillor
it's very
Rising.
difficult to speak very much to this item because we've received confidential information which can't actually be shared, and I don't think there's anyone in the room who isn't aware of the issue and isn't aware of. I'm sure we can understand why the motion is important. However, as anyone would understand, we are effectively directors of a very large organisation, and when incidents like this occur, there need to be some really clear practices that take place, and many of those processes and practices take place in confidence for, I would have thought, fairly clear reasons. And I can't spell that out because that information has been provided to us in confidence. I implore Councillor Nation to heed the advice that has been previously given to all councillors and to respect that advice. We are all concerned about issues such as this, absolutely concerned, and I have requested, I've made an operational request very similarly to you tonight. However, we must respect the obligations we have to the organisation, and we must respect the need for ongoing investigations to take place in confidence and to not prejudice those ongoing investigations in any way. We have a real legal duty to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isaac. Councillor Hodgson?
Look, I think that has really summed up the point. It's quite a serious matter. We are all taking it very seriously, and I hope that everyone can understand that this is not done with any intent other than to follow advice that has been received, and to seek the best outcome for our council and our community.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would anybody else like to speak on this? Councillor Nation?
So, point of clarification, just in reference to the request from the mover of the motion that I heed the advice given to all councillors, is that advice able to be circulated? Because I'm just in the inference was that this item should be heard in confidential, but I haven't seen that specific advice from the organisation post the deletion of one of the items in the motion, which was the matter pertaining to confidentiality. So could we maybe adjourn and get that advice circulated possibly, or just get it emailed to me, please?
Sending an email, I can do it it's no need to adjourn, I can do that in 10 seconds, just a moment.
Okay, that's your point of clarification, Councillor Nation. It's going to be hitting you very quickly, but whilst that's being sent, was there anybody else who wanted to speak on this being moved?
No, I'll reserve my right to speak.
Yes, Councillor Nation. On it being put into confidential. Councillor Bedio.
I'm still a little bit perplexed at why we're discussing confidentially at this point, seeing that Council Nation could potentially move any motion at this point. So what's on the screen might not necessarily be the motion that's moved. I personally don't see. My understanding is that the reasons to move into confidentiality are accurate, but I'm also concerned about what public scrutiny would be if we're seen to move such a sensitive topic into confidential. My understanding is the Herald Sun, The Age might see is that we've got something to hide when that's not the case at all. I actually think that's going to work against the organisation moving into confidential. For that reason, I wouldn't support it.
Thank you, Councillor Bedio. Councillor Nation, yes?
Mayor, just another point of clarification, and I again would seek an adjournment because I don't necessarily want to reference what's been forwarded to me via email in the public domain, but I'm willing to if I need to.
Excuse me, sorry, what I've sent is confidential. It's labelled confidential. It cannot be referenced in open chamber.
Councillor Isaac,
For
please.
interrupting again. So the question I have, my point of clarification was that the mover of the motion specifically said I need to heed the advice given to all councillors with a reference that this matter should be heard confidentially. But I would argue the advice that what was just circulated by email doesn't support that. So I'd seek an adjournment so we can actually get proper guidance from the exec, from the CEO and governance in regards to whether or not it should be moved into confidential. If the advice is, then yes.
Obviously there's confusion, so I will adjourn the meeting. It's 9:35. I'm mindful that as what's been moved at the moment is that Councillor Isa has moved that it goes into confidence. Councillor Hodgson has seconded it and has spoken to it, and Councillor Bedio has spoken on it. And we will adjourn at 9:36 for some clarification. Apologies to those that are online, watching online. We will. I'm predicting that we'll be back in approximately 5 minutes' time. And that is adjourned at 9:36. Thank you to all those that are viewing online. It's 9:44 and I'll reopen the meeting. At the moment, we are debating on whether or not an item goes in under confidential under the Local Government Act. It was moved by Councillor Isa and seconded by Councillor Hodgson, and then Councillor Bedio has also spoken to this. Would any other councillor like to speak on this motion? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, given that it is suggested and has been suggested by some councillors that some of us...
Point of order, please. Point of order. We just had an adjournment, and the contents of the adjournment cannot then be...
Speaking about that, please.
Councillors, that's enough. Councillor Isa, what is your point of order? Withdrawn? Okay. Councillor Nation, would you like to continue?
So, given that the discussion has been had following previous advice that's been forwarded and previous councillor updates, that if councillors so feel that it would be safer for the organisation to hear this in confidence, then I'm happy to support the motion. And that would have been what we would have heard if I hadn't have been interrupted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would anybody else like to speak to this motion? Councillor Isa, would you like to close? I will put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Nation, Councillor Tyson, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Byrne. All those against? Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Bedio. So this item of urgent business will be heard under confidential items, the urgent business under confidential items. Now, councillors, I am mindful that there is one more item on the agenda under confidential reports, which is item 12.1. And councillors, I need for the sake of the viewing, councillors, I need a motion that council resolves to close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 to discuss the following matter. 12.1, proposed lease for the temporary relocation of the Flemington and Ascot Vale libraries. Item 12.1 is considered confidential under the terms of section 3(1) of the Local Government Act 2020 as it contains information relating to (A) council business information, being information that would prejudice the council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released, as the items contains confidential commercial information. Councillors, do I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Hodgson, seconded Councillor Sypek. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour that this is for the library item to go into confidence?
The next one.
Item 12. That is Councillor Nation, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Tyson, that is carried unanimously. Okay. So we now have two items that will be debated under confidence. So one of the urgent business and one under item 12. So therefore, that for everyone who is viewing online, this is now the part of the meeting where we say goodbye to you. Thank you very much for joining in and listening to council meetings, and we look forward to welcoming you back into the chamber for our next meeting. Thank you very much.